What do CEOs need to know about sales these days? A lot. Outdated sales strategies and tactics plague most companies today. Listen to what innovative CEOs and experts have to say about how to change all that with Sales Talk for CEOs. Welcome to Sales Talk for CEOs. Today, we are going to talk about trust. It's something that I see people discussing on LinkedIn all the time. How do you earn trust so that you can get a conversation with someone who can buy from you or refer to you? And it's tough for salespeople. It's tough for CEOs. It's tough for everybody these days because we've become a society that just doesn't trust, right? And we don't trust brands anymore just because they make a commercial, because then we hear, oh yeah, that big brand puts this kind of dye in their food, or this big brand does this to their employees or something like that. So we've just started not trusting them, even though they have great commercials. And then who do we trust? Who knows? On LinkedIn, you see people being experts here, experts there. How do we know who to trust? So I think we've all become a little more skeptical. Well, we're never going to be able to talk to the people who can buy from us if they don't trust us. And so it's something that we simply have to learn how to do really, really well. And part of that is clarity of message. And not just the clarity of your message, but the consistency. And so that's what we're going to talk about today with Brian Miller. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Hey, Alice, thanks so much for having me.
Now, just before we dive into this topic, I want you to talk a little bit about what Clarity Up does.
Yeah, so you know how really, really smart people like experts, academics, researchers, scientists, industry leaders, they know their own stuff so well that they've just completely lost the ability to communicate that to non-experts, to people outside their field. It's a really big problem. We solve that problem. So we do message design for experts. Basically, we teach smart people how to explain their big ideas to the rest of us.
Yes. And so important, because as you and I were talking about just before we came on, in situations where CEOs, salespeople, other executives have to explain what they do. Somebody, oh, hi, how are you? What do you do? And, they get in a conversation and, that comes to the point where they have to say what they do to somebody, and they start this lengthy explanation, and they're done, and you still don't know what their company provides or what results they can get, right?
Yeah.
And
I mean, you just no idea.
It's terrible.
Yeah, it's the worst. I think there's a few different things going on here. I mean, people just generally don't know how to answer the world's worst question. And the world's worst question is, what do you do?
Right.
And it's not because it's a bad question. It's just because people don't know how to answer it makes it a bad question. There's a handful of things that people do when you ask them, what do you do? The first thing people tend to do is give you their title, right? What do you do? And they go accountant. And everyone's like, I don't care, right? Especially if you're an accountant, right? So It's like, I don't care. And it's because unless I also have your title, it's unlikely that I care about whatever it is that you do the way that you do. And so I don't care that you're an accountant. So if you give me your title, but there's another problem if you just give me your title, which is I might have baggage associated with that title. So you would think, I was a magician for a decade. I did corporate, high-end, exclusive event entertainment, sleight of hand all over the world. It was a blast. And you would think that if your title's magician, it would be easy to answer the question, what do you do? Because I would go, I'm a magician. And what would happen is immediately someone would go, oh, I wish my 6-year-old was here. She would love you. Now, instantly, they've put me in a bucket in their brain that is not what I do at all. I'd never done a kids' magic show in my life. And if you try to say that to somebody who just said, I wish my 6-year-old was here, they would love you. And I said, well, actually, I don't really do kids' magic. I really work at corporate events. What parents hear is, you hate children. Which is not what I said, but now I have to do all this mental work to pull them back, and I'm never going to get them back into the right bucket. So simply giving your job title doesn't do the work, right? So answering with your job title is not a good response to what do you do. But the other thing that people tend to do is ramble, like you said. They just start going on and on and on, trying to tell you the story, the case studies, their special, unique thing, all these things that have happened in their world. At some point, people just start looking around like, hey, maybe my friends are here and I can get out of this conversation. There they are. That's guacamole. There they are. And my other friend chips. Let me go get them. Like, and so those are two ways that people tend to, there is a third, I'm sorry. There is a third way that people answer this question. What do you do? And it's the most egregious, and real experts do this sometimes and don't mean anything by it, but it's very bad. An expert will sometimes go, well, it's kind of hard to explain,
Yes,
which
yes.
is just the most egregious answer because
Yeah.
one, it's condescending. It sounds condescending, like, what, you don't think I could understand it? Like, give me a chance. But it also tells me that maybe you're not the expert you say you are if you don't know how to explain it to me, right? And
Right.
so none of those ways work. We have to find a different way to answer the question, what do you do? Because if you can't answer that, nobody will be able to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you a little funny story here, but maybe not so funny because it was probably hurting my business. But I used to try to explain to people what I did, and it was so complicated. It was ridiculous. People would say, "Well, what do you do?" And I would say something like, "Well, I work with the CEOs and their senior teams to help them understand who their market is and how they can sell to them better and engage with them, blah, 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 blah." I mean, I went on and on, right? I was like, okay. And I was like, yeah, I mean, people don't understand what I do. And my friends used to tell people I was in marketing.
Yeah.
I'm not a marketer. I'm not trained in marketing. I mean,
Right.
I know a lot
Right.
about marketing now, but back then, especially, I didn't. I am a sales expert, right? But I
Mhm.
wasn't getting that across somehow. And so I worked with my good friend Park Powell, who is a story guy. And we came up with an easy way for me to answer. And what a huge difference, right? So now I say, I help companies elevate sales to increase their valuation. And then
Straightforward.
people automatically would say, well, how do you do that? And I think that's the magic, right?
Yes.
When we can say something that's short and concise, and then they can say, how do you do that? Now they're interested. Now you've got
Right.
a captive audience and you can give them a little bit more, right?
That's
But
right.
yeah, I mean, also, I think the other piece of this is just how important it is. Like, that's what I say, and that's what everyone at my company says.
Yes. Yes. And the consistency in messaging across your entire platform is really important. And the way that we think about it is, I don't need every single person on your team to say the exact same sentence. Now, it's nice at the brand level. If somebody says, what does your
Yeah.
company do? Everybody should be giving some version of exactly the same sentence. But if they say, what do you do? What we often do is we work first at the brand level for their core messaging. We work with the founder, the CEO, or a couple of VIPs, make sure that the brand messaging is in place and that everybody can repeat it and that everybody then on the company knows how to say it. But then we'll often work with the individuals who tend to be more public facing, who will actually be answering this question, representing the company in some capacity, and help them develop their own answer to that for their particular role within the core messaging that we've already built for the brand. Because, I worked with a boutique law firm a couple of years ago, and if you had asked 18 different people, you would have had 18 completely different answers. And it was actually what they brought me in to solve for, which is they said, we get most of our work from referrals, networking, but no one knows how to talk. Like, the attorney who does this type of law doesn't know how to talk about the attorney two doors down that does a different type of law. And
Right.
sometimes they'll meet somebody that could have hired our firm, but would have been working with a different one of our attorneys, but it'll never occur to them because they don't know how to talk about it with any level of consistency.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I have this problem too. Pretty much every time I go into a new company to do what I do, which is advise on their go-to-market strategy so they can elevate their sales, right?
Right.
So I will ask the CEO, tell me what you do, right? And I'll hear the answer. What does your company do? I'll hear the answer. Then I go around and ask others in the company the same question. And it's sometimes so vastly different that I'm like, do you people work at the same place?
Exactly.
And I think that it's interesting because everyone has their own perspective, which, yes, of course. But like you said, at the brand level, the words should all be super similar, right?
Yeah.
Everybody should know what the company does, what results they
Yeah.
provide, right? And also things like who they serve. And that should be super clear too. But then I think what you said is so important. So then what do they say though about themselves? Well,
Mhm.
I'm the person who makes sure all the goods get shipped to you without any problems.
Right, exactly.
What does each individual say? Because they might say, well, our company does X, right? And brings this to you. But then people may want to know, well, what do you do at the company,
Right.
right? And they need a clear, concise answer.
Yes. Yeah, and it needs to be concise, it needs to be clear, but more importantly than any of those things is actually it needs to be repeatable.
Yeah.
Because if people can't repeat your message when you're not in the room, it dies there. It dies in the room. And I think that a huge amount of the work we do, while we do brand level like we're talking about here, our real area of expertise is working on speaking engagements. We spend probably 80% of our time helping our clients give TED style talks at events and give keynote speeches and presentations and pitches and these kind of things. And so when an expert or an industry leader is going to get up on stage and speak to a room, and they need to hold the attention of the room, command the room for 20 minutes or more, right? 20 to 60 minutes. um, there's a lot of people who are experts, but they're not trained speakers. And for a long time, we considered what we did speaker coaching. And then at some point, we realized that when people think of speaker coaching, they think of how do you hold your arms? How do
Yeah,
you
right. How do
breathe
you stand? How do
properly?
you,
How do
but
yeah,
block
it's
your
the
movement?
Toastmasters
How do
thing.
you
W-
keep your voice modulated?
Yes,
And how do
exactly.
how do you raise your pitch and when do you do it? And all those kinds of sort of
Right.
technical logistic things about speaking.
Right. Which are all useful, but only if you're already giving a great speech. And what we realized was that our thesis that we've kind of built everything on is that it's not great speakers that move people to action. It's great speeches that move people to action.
Great messages, right?
Yeah.
Great messages.
And so if you can get the right ideas in the right order and you can say them with clarity, people can remember them, they can understand them, and more importantly, they can repeat them
Repeat
when
them.
you're not in the room. And that is what you need because the world, like, okay, we started off talking about trust. This is the problem of trust is that you can't advertise your way into it anymore. It's gone. I mean, that industry it's just gone. Traditional advertising is barely hanging on. That's not how people buy. I mean, I'm sure you've noticed recently that like Reddit is just showing up in every Google search now. It's
Yeah.
because well, one, because Reddit and Google obviously made some kind of a deal, but two, right? Two, it's because what people do is they don't go to the company's website anymore. They go to Reddit to find out who's talking about this company, who's talking about this person. What do you what do you do? And it's like if you have inconsistent messaging across the internet, if people don't know how to talk about what you do, they will not talk about what you do. And if nobody's talking about you, you get no trust. You get no cut through.
Yeah, yeah, so important. All right, so let's break it down because all the CEOs out there listening and all of those who support CEOs really want to know how to do it, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
that's the important thing. So let's start with trust and move into the messaging. Because
Yeah.
people ask me all the time, well, how do you build trust? So I'm going to start with the way that I tell salespeople, and then I want to, ask you, how else can we do it? So trust is about credibility, right? And so the best way is to have someone who believes you are credible and who trusts you to introduce you to someone else
Mhm.
and transfer that credibility, right? So I say, oh my gosh, Brian Miller is the best at helping people with the message they want to get across for their presentation. And so I say that to them and they go, oh, well, I trust Alice. And so if she says Brian is the best one, then I'm going to talk to Brian, right? So now that's been transferred. Now, the first time you open your mouth, you can shred all of your credibility to
Yeah.
bits, but I know you won't. But you now walked in with some credibility. They're trusting you. They've started with some trust. What you do next can either make or break that, right? But at
Right.
least it started. So in sales, rather than doing cold outreach, I'm always suggesting that they get an introduction that transfers some of that credibility. Now, that's not always possible, right? But
Right.
then when you think, what else can a salesperson do? Well, it's really up to their marketing team and the CEO to get that messaging right that's being spread all over the internet so they can capitalize on that trust that was built. So let's go there and talk about how can companies build trust? Like what are the steps?
Yeah. So ideas don't speak for themselves, people do. So someone has to be speaking on behalf of the work that you do, or, and if it doesn't have to be the CEO. There's been this big push for like the CEO should always be a personal brand, should be a thought leader. Well, some CEOs are not meant for that. They don't have the personality for that, but someone at the organization has to be. We trust people. We don't trust companies. And so if you're going to build trust, first, there's got to be a person out there talking. Now, you mentioned a few different scenarios. One is you got a referral from somebody, an introduction, a direct introduction. That is obviously the best case scenario. And it goes back to what we talked about earlier, though. The person who can give you that referral, who can make that introduction for you, needs to know what you do, who it's for, and why it matters. Because
Right.
if they don't know that, it won't even occur. Have you ever had this happen where someone that you're connected with on Facebook, maybe personally, let's go personal for a second. Someone that you're connected with on Facebook posts, I'm looking for someone to help me with X. And it's exactly what you do. And you go, what? They know me personally. Why don't they just reach out to me? Well, what that tells me is that that person does not closely associate you with that thing they're looking for. They've got you in a bucket in their brain where that message did not land.
Like
What
magicians for children, right?
Right,
So they get,
exactly.
oh, well, you don't do
Exactly.
corporate events. They wouldn't even ask you to, right?
That's right. Exactly. And so the first thing is that I call it the natural networking introduction. When you asked me at the very beginning, what does Clarity Up do? And I gave you my introduction, that is the same. I gave it to you in the same framework that we teach everybody. And the framework is this. So the very first thing is we're not going to start with a title. The very first thing is we're going to start with relevance. And relevance, so I have this thing. In my own personal brand, I do human connection. I do corporate culture. I give keynotes and workshops in human connection around the world. And people think connection, when you get on, say, like a sales call or a meet and greet or a coffee or whatever, they think that what connection is going, oh, that's such a great bookshelf behind you. Boy, I love that sweater. Oh, what's your cat's name? It's like, that is not connection. That we like do that for
That's chit
4
chat.
seconds.
That's
It's
what,
chit
yeah,
chat.
whatever.
And I
Yeah.
understand that people want to warm up with that. But what real connection is in the professional world, we're not talking about becoming friends with someone. We're talking about professionally. You will earn trust very quickly if the words out of your mouth are relevant to the person that you're on the call with or that you're meeting with.
100%.
And so, very quickly, you need to either articulate the want or the problem of the person you're speaking to. This is true whether you're on stage for 1,000 people or in a one-on-one sales call. It's true no matter what. We call this the premise because we believe that great speaking, great representations are about making a case, building an argument. And a lot of people don't think of it like that, but that is what you're doing in theory. You're making a case for why someone should do a new thing, hopefully in your direction, right? That's what you're looking for. You're looking for someone to change their behavior, which hopefully means hiring you, working with you, referring someone to you. But change requires change. And so people will only change something if they find what you do is relevant to them. And the two easiest ways to make something relevant are a known want or a known problem.
Mhm.
So a known want, and I say known want because when you ask most, whether it's an executive or a small business owner or an expert or a marine biologist, whoever it is, you say, well, you're going to be talking to this group of people on stage. What do they want? Or you're going to be in a sales call. What do they want? And they'll tell you all about the unique, special, trademarked solution that they have. Or they'll say something very vague that sounds like a marketing slogan. They'll say, I say, well, what do they want? They'll go, they want to be empowered to be the best version of themselves. I'm like, has anyone ever Googled that? At 2 o'clock in the morning, can't fall asleep, sweating, shaking, existential crisis. How
I'd
do I
like to be the best
become the
version of
best version of
myself,
my
Google.
right? No one has ever Googled, right? How do I discover my inner goddess at 2 o'clock in the morning? It sounds great in a marketing slogan, but it's not actually what people want. So you go, what do they know that they want? In the words, and now here's what happens sometimes. You say, what does your audience know that they want? And they'll figure this out and then they'll go, but that's not what they should want. I go, it doesn't. I
Doesn't
know that
matter.
you know that. It doesn't matter. This really trips people up is that they go, well, I can't say that because I know that's not what they should want. I go, you have to meet them where they are. To start with something relevant. So either a want or a problem. So
You're
when you
just
ask,
starting to sound like a salesperson now, Brian. A good salesperson is what I'm saying. Because every good salesperson knows they need to start with relevance and they need to
yeah,
understand what this person wants, which may not be what you sell or the solution you provide.
that's right.
The thing that's interesting about sales, though, is that sometimes people get this preconceived notion, right? But it's what you can explore with them and help them figure out that's really not what it
Right.
is. And if the journey, right, and the story is relevant, you can bring them around.
Right. And if you think about classic story structure, so we'll go to the hero's journey for a second, which I know is a cliched kind of a trite topic.
Oh no,
But
I
if
think it's great. If people would just pay attention to Joseph Campbell's,
yeah,
story, right? Cycle.
yeah,
I mean, we would be in a lot better shape. I mean,
right.
seriously, because
The,
that's what humans relate to.
yes. And if you and we could go all story brand Donald Miller on this, but if you really strip this back, just there's this one part of classic heroes journeys that people don't talk about enough, and it's the difference between a want and a need. And here's what it is. If you watch basically any of the top 50 highest grossing movies of the last 100 years, almost all of them were heroes' journeys. It's
Yes.
bananas, right? It's just basically all of them. So watch your favorite movie. What happens is this. There's a main character at the beginning of the movie. They want something. If you really want to see this perfectly played out, watch a Disney or a Pixar movie. They will
Yeah.
literally sing an I wish song, an I want song in the first 10 minutes. They will literally go, this is what I want. This is the hero's journey I'm on. So they want something. Now you can imagine a main character is, I don't know, never knew their parents, and they want to meet their parents. They want to meet their birth parents. Okay, so they go on a journey, and their friends come along with them, and they go on this whole thing. The whole movie. At the end of the movie, they never meet their parents, but they discover that their friends are their real family, and that's what they were looking for all along.
Yeah.
So here's the deal with the hero's journey. People want something. By the end of their journey, sometimes they get what they want, but not always. They always get what they need. But if you don't meet them at the want, they won't go on the journey with you. You don't have to deliver what they want. You just have to deliver what they need, but you have to articulate what they want to start, or they won't listen to you.
Now, isn't that a song, Brian? You're a music guy. Get what you need, right?
Yes, that's right. You can't. Yes, you
You can't
can't always get what
want,
you want. That's right, as the great
right? But
philosopher
if you
Mick Jagger
try
once said.
sometimes, right? All right. So that hero's journey, it starts with I want. Now,
Yeah.
we also need things, but people, it's a higher aspiration than need. It's want, right? And if we
Yes.
know what that is, and this is in sales, what I always relate to calling a personal win. So I need to solve this CRM problem that we have because our salespeople don't use our CRM, customer relationship management software, because it's horrible. That's why they don't use it. But that's okay. So they
They're
don't
all
use it,
horrible.
and I want them, right. I want them to use it. Um, and but what do I need, right? Or I mean, the need and the want sometimes get a little confusing, but I'm just saying.
People often
So
don't know what they need. That's the
right, and
problem.
but what I need is to keep my job and to look really
Yeah.
good in the end. So
Yes.
I better solve this problem really well. So I'm coming to you saying, I want my salespeople to use the CRM.
Right.
Okay, and people tell me that all the time, right? That is, I hear that all the time.
Right.
So okay, great. You want them to use a CRM. I get it. Let's talk through that, blah, blah, blah. But why?
Right.
Right? Well, because
Yeah.
I can't get the data I need. Okay, so what? Right? So why does that
Right.
matter? Well, because then I look like an idiot in front of the board when I can't pull good data. Oh, I see. And
Yeah.
so what does that mean for you in your career? Well, I'm certainly not going to advance if every time I go in front of the board and I don't have the data that I need, right? So,
Right.
I mean, when you get down to it, like people can tell you if you can ask them good questions
Yes.
and deep enough and go with them down that path, you can get there, right? But you're right. They
Yes.
start with here's what I want.
Yes. Now here is where there's a difference between the work that we do and the work that you tend to do in sales. So in sales, you're having a one-on-one
Yeah.
conversation and you can actually ask those questions. But So much of the selling that's done today is not done in one-on-one conversations. It's done posting videos on social media. It's done from the front of a room. It's done in podcasts. It's
Yeah.
done like this, where I don't have the audience here, the individual, to ask those deep questions. And so I have to do this work in advance. I have to do all the work of understanding the audience and the way that we think of speaking. So let's talk about like a speaking engagement, whether it's, 20 minutes or an hour, or it could be shorter than that.
And whether it's internal or external, it doesn't
Internal,
matter.
external, right. You think of this as a presentation. Here's the thesis that we work with. A speech, a great speech, is not a series of interesting points. It is a sequence of interesting answers to questions the audience is already asking.
Wow. Say
The
that
key,
again. It's a
okay.
sequence of
It's a
interesting.
sequence of interesting answers to questions they're already asking.
I love it.
And so here's the key. If you know the questions the audience is asking and the order they're likely to ask them in, you work backwards and design your speech to simply answer those questions in that order. And what happens is magic. If you've ever been in the audience for a speaker and you just kind of sat back and like it just kind of the whole thing was wonderful. You never had to think too hard. And then all of a sudden it was over. You couldn't believe an hour went by and you're like, that was amazing. I would argue that most of the time it's not because they were the most amazing presenter, particularly funny, particularly whatever. It's because they were actually answering the questions that kept coming up in your head as you were asking them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes a brilliant presenter will all they'll do is just get the order wrong. They'll put the order of the ideas in the wrong place and you have a question, but the next thing they start talking about isn't the answer to that question. And now you're disconnected from the speech because you still want to know the answer. And if 20 minutes from now they answer that question, you've lost the thread by then and you've tuned out and you're back on your emails. And so a
Yeah.
huge amount of the work that we do is our clients are often not in the one-on-one call. And so we have to go, all right, what are the questions they're asking? What order they're asking them in? And let's build the presentation with that knowledge.
Yeah, that's powerful. So powerful. And I think, even when the CEO is giving like the state of the company
Mhm. Mhm.
report at a meeting, they should be doing that, right? Because everybody has
100%.
questions about that, right?
Yeah.
Everybody wants to know. They've got all these questions about how is the company doing. And if you can
Yeah.
think through those, and if you can't on your own, you got a lot of people around you. You could ask, like, hey, what are you wondering about?
Yep.
What are the
Exactly.
questions, right? And then you can work with that. I love that. I'm going to take you back for a minute because we had started to talk about messages that build trust, and you
Yes.
said we've got to start with relevance.
Yes.
And you mentioned a couple of things about relevance, that I think are really important, and they have to be relevant to that audience at that moment in time, right? Because you said you're building a case, right? You're
Yes.
building an argument. What's the next thing after relevance that has to be there?
Yeah. So the next thing after relevance, which is want or problem for the most part, could be belief or fear. I don't start with those when I'm talking generally on a podcast because beliefs and fears are harder for people to do if they haven't practiced that. But wants, problems, beliefs, and fears. That's how you get relevance. Okay. Once you've done that, the next thing is stakes. It's urgency. It's
Ah.
okay. I know that what you're saying is relevant to me, but is this urgent? Can't I just push this off? Because that
Mhm.
almost everything is pushed off, right? Everything you're doing when you're doing messaging, particularly verbal communication, what you're fighting against is not disagreement, it's inaction. It's just people just don't want to do anything new, right? And
Yeah.
so you have to respect that as you build your message. So first is they're going to ask the question, is what you're talking about relevant to me? That's the first question. That's why we start there. The second question, after they go, okay, what he's talking about is relevant to me, they're going to ask, fine, but is it urgent? Do I really have to deal with this now? And so there are lots of ways to talk about stakes, but urgency are short term negative consequences, right? What's likely to go wrong soon. And there are so many people uncomfortable talking about this because they think what you're going to do is they're like, I don't want to be negative. It's like,
It's doom
yeah,
and gloom.
it's doom and gloom, is this and that. It's like, okay, first of all, we know from a huge treasure trove of research that you can go back to Kahneman and all this stuff. We don't need to talk about it. You just go Google it, LLM it, Chat GPT it, look it up. We know that people are so much more motivated by avoiding
A
short-term
loss.
pain,
Right.
by avoiding loss than they are by the equivalent win or
100%.
gain. So the key here is this, where I think sales goes wrong a lot when people think of sleazy salespeople, which is an incredibly common thing, right? Is that they really dig the knife into people. It's like they're trying to invent stakes. That's
Yes.
not
There's
the goal here.
create pain. That's what
Right.
sales leaders and people teach.
Right.
Oh, go in there and create some pain, find some pain. I'm like, oh
Yeah, no, don't do that.
no.
They're already in pain. You don't have to create it. All you have to do is remind them of it. It's very gentle. In an hour-long keynote that we're helping someone build, we might only be on this for 45 seconds or 90 seconds. It's remind them of what's likely to go wrong soon. And it's not everything will burn to the ground, your spouse will leave you, that business will burn, your grandkids will never know happiness. Like it can't be that, right? It's just what's likely to go wrong or continue going wrong soon. Just remind them of something they already know. Because again, they're not in that mindset. You're living in that mindset because this is your world. But they're not. They got a billion things on their mind, and you need to focus them in on what you're there to talk about. So after relevance is urgency.
Yeah. Okay. And is there another one?
Yeah. Well, there's actually 10 of them. I'm sure we won't do all of them, but
we can put them in the show notes.
But essentially, what we're talking about right now is just how to grab them. What in the introduction?
That's right.
So it's really, when we're building speeches, we call this the instant engagement introduction.
Yes.
So relevance, urgency, and the third thing, and this is the last part of that instant engagement. The third thing is we call this the core question. This is actually a term that my colleague Tamsin Webster started using. She and I are kind of two of the co-founders of the core messaging movement, and she's brilliant. She's written about Find Your Red Thread and Say What They Can't Unhear. And she started using this term, the core question. And what she means by that, and the way that we use it as well, is say out loud the question that your talk or your product or your service is an answer to. Say out loud, what's the question that your talk or your work or your product or your service is the answer to? In other words, what the core question does is it says, what is this conversation or what is this talk really about?
Yeah, that's powerful. So give me an example. If you were going to talk about what you do to an audience, what is that question?
So how do we get our ideas to spread in a world of low trust and high noise?
Wow. Yeah.
As soon as I say that, everything else I'm about to say is going to be an answer to that question. And what's important about this is it cannot be a rhetorical question. Rhetorical questions are by definition designed not to be answered. Speakers make this mistake all the time. They ask a rhetorical question, right? How feeling good? Right? They ask questions that are designed not to be answered. It's cheap, and because they're designed not to be answered, no one tries to answer it, and so there's no engagement when that happens. The other type of question is a leading question. Salespeople are really egregious with this, and salespeople got to stop doing this. Leading questions are questions where we can tell there's a specific answer I want you to say. I was at a conference recently with an otherwise wonderful speaker who just could not stop asking the same question throughout the whole. They were a really high energy jump kicks kind of a speaker, like physically jumping up and down, one of those. And they were great. They've been very successful, whatever. But they could not stop asking, does that make sense? Say yes.
Yeah.
Like they kept doing that. They literally kept doing that. And it's just like, I mean, all right already. Right. So don't ask rhetorical questions.
Yeah, it's terrible. When salespeople do it, I just want to throw up, honestly.
Yeah.
Because the rhetorical or the answer to it, or like this one drives me nuts. So if we do all that, you're going to buy, right?
Yeah. It's a leading question. Right.
Like
so,
what? Like,
right, exactly.
I don't know, because first of all, I don't even know if you can do all that. So how could I answer that? Right. So it's just a bad question all the way around.
Right. So what you're looking for in this question is a question the audience would genuinely want the answer to and doesn't know. And what happens when you ask this is you start an open loop. You open a loop in their brain, because if I say, so how is it that we get our ideas to spread in a world of low trust and high noise? You actually start trying to answer that for yourself in your head. Your brain can't help it because you don't know the answer. And you start going, well, what would I do? Well, I've done that. And because you're now trying to answer it in your head, you're actually engaging with the message, you're engaging with the topic, and I now have your attention. I've got your
Yeah.
engagement.
Yeah. Can I put you on the spot?
Please.
Okay, great. So let's, for this same topic of what you would, if you were doing this presentation, can you give us the relevance, the stakes? You already gave us the core question, but just do it in a fluid little blip
Yeah.
here so everybody can hear it.
So happy to do it. Also, just go back to the beginning and re-listen to this podcast. I've done them all in this order. It's exactly the order we did it in. And it's the same concept. Okay. So relevance. I started off by saying, have you noticed that experts, scientists, academics, researchers, industry leaders, they really struggle with explaining what they do to people who are not in their world or in their field? And if you say that right away, that's relevance, right? To the kind of people that I'm talking to, not to
Yeah.
everybody, but to the people I'm trying to
That's
talk to.
your specific audience. So
Right.
they're like,
Right.
yes, that's me.
Exactly. And then we talked about the trust recession, which is urgency, which is, hey, increasingly people don't trust anybody. We don't trust leaders. We don't trust brands, companies. We don't trust each other. We don't even trust ourselves. Right. Now, if I were giving a real talk, there's stats to support this, but
Yes.
all I have to say is, hey, we're in a trust recession. And like, if people don't trust you, they won't listen to you. If they don't listen to you, they cannot spread your message. If they don't spread your message, your ideas die with you.
And because you work with a lot of science people who have important messages to send, that is critical.
It is critical, especially when you're working with something that actually is hard to demonstrate short-term positive results for, like climate communicators,
Right.
like marine biologists, where they're like, well, this will hopefully help us avoid terrible consequences 150 years from now. And it's like, well, it's no wonder people aren't listening. Because today my kids need braces and, it's just all this other stuff happening right now.
Yes.
Right. So that's urgency. And then the question is the one I just asked, which is, okay, well, so we've got low trust, but we've also got high noise, which is something we didn't talk about as much. But I would normally in a presentation say, not only do people not trust anymore, but also there's never been more people shouting at us, trying to get our attention, right? So how do we get our ideas to spread in a world of low trust and high noise?
Beautiful.
And then I pause, and then people are like, I'm ready to listen to you for an hour. Like,
well, I don't want to skip over that. The pause is super important. So when you do that kind of an intro, with the relevance, the stakes, and the core question, you have to pause and let people absorb it.
Yes, you have to pause. And it's very scary for non-trained speakers who have to give speeches to sit in silence. And actually, that was very hard for me to learn because I came out of magic, where I did comedy magic. Everything, if they were laughing or they were cheering or they were falling out of their seats or jumping up and down, and I switched into speaking, and you realize it's almost the opposite. You've landed the point when the audience is dead silent and staring at you.
Yes.
And it's very scary if you're not ready for that. But if you don't pause, you don't give people a chance to process. And more importantly, you don't give them a chance to try to answer the question you just asked. And if you don't let them try to answer it, they won't actually engage with you. So on stage, I will say that in a world of low trust and high noise.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
And the answer is, and then I start.
Yeah, right. And the answer is, so I love that because now they're listening. Okay. I mean, this time went by so quickly. I could talk to you about this all day because it's just so crucially important. But before we go, I have a couple of questions for you.
Sure.
So the first one is, what's a book that you think every CEO should read?
All right, the book I think every CEO should read. I get nothing for recommending this book. I do not know the author, although I'd love to meet him. The Death of Expertise by Tom Nichols. The Death of Expertise. This book came out in 2017, The Campaign Against Established Knowledge and Why It Matters. He was so far ahead talking about the current state of trust. This came out in 2017, and it's an entire book exploring across many different aspects of life, from science to healthcare to education, why people, particularly Americans, but not just Americans, are not only less trusting, but are actively anti-expertise, and why that matters. And this is really important for people in leadership positions to understand.
Wow. I'm definitely going to add that to my reading list. Okay. Next question. What's a podcast you love because it makes you think differently?
All right, so I'm going to give you two of them. One is How I Write. with David
Oh,
Perel. It's one of the only podcasts anywhere I can find that's dedicated to the craft of writing, which is
wow.
sometimes about fiction. It's sometimes about nonfiction. Sometimes there are speechwriters. Sometimes there are poets. Sometimes there are sitcom writers, but it's about the craft of writing. And I'm really big on the craft of writing because I think a lot of people try to become better communicators by thinking, but it's the opposite. You write to become a better thinker.
Yeah.
So writing first, thinking second. So I love that. And I also, I'll give you kind of a famous one that more of the audience will be familiar with, but I love Pivot with Scott Galloway and Kara Swisher.
Oh
They're
gosh.
they're
Yeah.
just magnificent, the two of them together.
They have several podcasts. They have
They're
Raging
so
Moderate.
good.
And I mean, yeah, that Scott Galloway is amazing. I love it.
Always something that,
Anything by him, I want to listen to. Anything.
yeah. And
Um,
Kara does such a great job of because Scott needs someone to keep him in
oh yeah,
check. Like
he will wander.
he's all over the place, right? So he is an example of someone that if you give him a stage and a microphone in an hour and no intervention, you have no idea what you're going to get.
Yeah.
But Kara has this ability to like pull him back and keep him on message, and so they work really well together.
Oh yeah, that's so awesome. That's a good one. All right, last one. What does every CEO need to know to win in this market? And I think I know your answer, but go ahead.
If people do not know how to talk about what you do, they will not talk about what you do. If people are not talking about what you do, very, very soon your ideas will die with you. So make sure that you are not confusing people, but more to the point, make sure people know what you do, who it's for, why it matters, and can repeat it when you're not in the room.
Yes, that message matters and it
Yeah.
has to be consistent and repeatable.
Yeah.
Love it. Thank you so much for being on the show
My
today.
pleasure.
Really great information. Can't wait to talk to you again and have a great day.
Thanks so much, Alice. We'll talk soon.
If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.